Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. Shout out to everyone in the live chat. We got several boxing topics to cover this evening, this morning, or this afternoon, wherever you are in the world. All depends on your location. But before we get to that, I'm just going to make an adjustment here with the volume of my mic. Just turn it up slightly. All right. Let me know if you guys can hear me loud and clear in the live chat. In fact, I think I'm getting a bit of interference on this mic. What's all that about? I have to turn that down again. I'm going to do a rundown of the topics we're going to cover. Obviously, there's the main topic of discussion here, which will be Luke Partridge announcing a quote-unquote comeback. Well, who'd have thought it? But we're also going to be talking about, just run you through here, the boxing over the weekend, Johnny Fisher, his comeback bout, and the Eddie Hearn Monaco card in general. And also Eddie Hearn's, how can I describe it? Methods over the past, let's call it 4 or 5 years. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about Jai Opetaia versus Hussein Sin Cara, his latest defense of his Cruiserweight World title. Isaac Cruz versus Lamont Roach. Anthony Joshua's apparent weight, because people are saying he's bang on weight right now. Also, the obvious main title of this stream, as I say, Luke Partridge's comeback. Before we get into that, just want to shout out everyone in the live chat. Let's see who we've got in here. Excuse me. Big up to Matt Borgerson early. He says, it seems Americans love chaotic personalities more. Also from Matt, he says, hey man, what are your thoughts on American sense of sensationalism when it comes to chaotic personality versus their British counterpart, Luke Partridge? He also says, Shabazz Massoud put on a clinic against Peter McGrail. I was very impressed with that win. McGrail was very good. Only loss was a freak KO. All right. Well, with regards to chaotic personalities, it's absolutely 100% been my observation that Americans prefer that, or the American audience prefers that, more so than the British audience. 100% absolutely. I've observed that over the years. As far as, and sensationalism in general, Americans tend to like their fighters, particularly heavyweight champions, rough around the edges. In this day and age, or during most of my lifetime, Americans don't like a clean-cut, respectful heavyweight champion. And I think Muhammad Ali, to some extent, but more so Mike Tyson, really set the precedent for what the American boxing audience wants from a heavyweight champion. They don't want the clean-cut guy. That was back in the days with Joe Louis and whatnot. From at least the 80s onwards, Mike Tyson set the precedent. They want a trash-talking, rough around the edges, questionable background type of character. They want car crash television. That's what sells in the United States. They want someone who's going to cause controversy. Yes, far more so. There's a lot of people in the UK who like that too, but it's a easier sell. That type of personality is an easier sell in America. Shout out to Matt Borgerson for the super chat. Regarding Shabazz Massoud putting on a clinic against Peter McGrail, I paid very little attention to Peter McGrail or the other guy that lost on the card, Pat McCormack. Reason being, I never saw anything to get me interested in either of those fighters. I didn't see any special talent or anything. To me, they were pretty run-of-the-mill guys. I know McCormack had a, amateur background of note, but the amateurs and the pros are very different, and you can normally tell the guys who are going to have a lot of success in the pros, the successful amateurs I'm talking about, and you can tell the ones generally who are not. Case in point, Fraser Clark. He was a very successful amateur. Not many people predicted big things for him in the pros, right? So I was never very impressed by McGrail or McCormack. That's why I didn't really talk about them much, cover them much on my channel. The fact that they got beat, I don't think the guys who beat them were any great shakes, to be honest. I just think it shows the relatively limited level of McGrail and McCormack to begin with. That's my personal take on it. Normally when you get really talented, genuinely world-class British fighters, they're either really big punchers or they've got world-class hand speed or both. Those guys, Peter McGrail and McCormack, had neither. Right? Neither guy had Amir Khan type speed. Neither guy had, Anthony Joshua punching power or whatever. Now, there are some exceptions. Luke Partridge isn't really a massive puncher, nor does he have blistering speed, but he has been a world-class fighter for many years. But as I say, I'm talking in general terms. You can spot the British and any fighters from any part of the world, but in this case, I'm talking specifically about British fighters. You can spot the British fighters that are going to go places at world level quite early on because they'll have like outlandish power or outlandish speed or both. So, yeah. Big up Bongo in the live chat. We got a strange comment here from Scraggs. He says, he, as in Luke Partridge, was not retired. He was under contract with the producers of At Home with the Furies. It's public knowledge. I'm not sure whether Scraggs is being sarcastic or whether he's being serious. I don't know. Because Luke Partridge literally announced his retirement earlier on this year, which I'm going to show screenshots of, like, as if most of you even need to see, but I'm going to show regardless screenshots of when he actually said this. Shout out to G-Man, Liam Goff in the chat. Shout out to JR. Someone press button. Don Gorgon. Boy Better Know. Isaac Blings. Someone with a very long name there. I'll just call him Idol. He says, happened ever since you've come with the name Luke Partridge. I cannot take the man serious. It's so funny. Pick up Idol. MT, Dominica. Philip Anser, Jed, Jay Manchester, Warner, Tumble. Okay, Retard Finder, that's an interesting name. Matthew Berry, Gaming Nerd, Gary, Jelly Mode in the place. Cropperting, Real Bad Man, Chili Beef, yes, yes. Blue Tiger. Trolls are bad. All right, you got Warren Williams in the chat. That's right, Mr. Murray. Big up. Let's get those likes up, folks. We got 169 concurrent viewers, only 31 likes. We can get those likes up. Be much appreciated. Southpaw Boxer, big up. JD, King Jams, Paladin Poker, Crimson Jackal, Mark Odell, Flock, First Round, Boxing. We got Goozy in the chat. We got Baz Newton in the chat. Jack Hammer in the chat. What's up, what's up, what's up? Crazy Pickney. Shout out to everyone locking in. All right? Encircled says he doesn't even want to watch Fury fight anymore. Bored of the guy. Anyway, we'll come on to Mr. Luke Partridge. Shout out to everybody. Shout out to Matt Borgerson. But first of all, let's address Johnny Fisher's comeback over the weekend. Did any of you guys see this fight? If so, what did you make of it? Johnny Fisher came back against a guy called Ivan Balaz and managed to score a KO victory in round 4, but not before being put on Queer Street in the very first round, the back end of the very first round. He was caught with some chopping shots on the inside, and down went Johnny again, but somehow the referee didn't call it a knockdown. Absolutely scandalous. As I understand it, there was another incident, very contentious incident on the card, where something similar happened. Where a referee also didn't call a knockdown of one of Eddie Hearn's fighters. So, yeah, Johnny Fisher was put in there against this Ivan Balaz guy, who really is a pie. Okay. So they put him in there against the pie, and Johnny Fisher almost got himself chinned again. All over the place. When he got, and like I say, the referee didn't call it a knockdown when it blatantly was. When the action resumed, the referee broke them, gave Johnny Fisher time to recover a little bit. When the action resumed, Fisher basically revived his rugby playing days and charged into Balaz rugby tackle style to try and survive the rest of the round because he was badly hurt. I can't even hate on him for that. He had to do what he had to do in the situation. Be that as it may, he managed to make it out of the round because the knockdown that wasn't called was right at the back end of that round. Comes out for the next round, and somehow the opponent didn't press the action in the following rounds to the extent that you might have expected given the early success. Given that he knew how vulnerable Johnny Fisher was. In fact, it reminded me a little bit of when Daniel Dubois was badly hurt by Kevin Lerena and dropped several times, and then Lerena inexplicably stopped fighting. Very, very strange. It reminded me a little bit of that. So Johnny Bosch, as I like to call him, managed to get off the hook and stopped the guy Balaz with some pretty, how can I describe, not exactly devastating knockdowns. And yeah, Balaz was stopped in the 4th. And Johnny Bosch was very excited about it all. And look, all jokes aside, I respect Johnny Bosch for being a trier. I respect the fact that despite being very limited and what have you, he still goes in there and gives it a go. I respect it. But objectively speaking, the guy's absolutely useless. And I've been saying this from day one. Right? I've been saying this guy, again, no disrespect to him. He's doing what he has to do to put food on the table. But objectively speaking, he's just an Essex gimmick. That's all he is. He's an Eddie Hearn Essex gimmick. That's all he was from the very beginning. And I think it's pretty much accepted now by most boxing fans, perhaps even among the Bosch army, the Essex crowd that was supporting him for the longest time. Eddie Hearn knows his people. When I say his people, I'm talking about Essex people. He knows them. He knows that they're very loyal to their fighters. He knows that they come out and support. He knows that they've got a relatively high disposable income, the Essex crowd, right? And that's why he milks that crowd as much as he can. Whenever he finds some little Essex fighter here or there, he's going to push them to the max. Not just because he's from Essex, but as I say, for the reasons I've just laid out. All right, Eddie Hearn is from Essex himself. He knows the crowd there. So he concocted this Bosch Johnny Fisher character. The dad was brought in, Johnny Sr. with the Chinese food and all that type of stuff. And they created this whole gimmick thing And they tried to sell Johnny Fisher at one point, shamelessly, as a world-class heavyweight prospect. So much so that the casuals, in Essex at least, started buying into it to the extent that they were calling for him to fight Moses Itauma. I mean, forgive them, Lord, they know not what they did. They were looking to send their own guy, and I'm talking about the Bosch Army now, into certain doom. I'm talking about he should fight Moses Itauma. Are you mad? So Johnny Bosch, 26 years of age, 14-1. That one loss, obviously, to Dave Allen. Although many would argue it should be 2 losses to Dave Allen. Where does he go from here? I'm going to reiterate and repeat what I said after the Dave Allen KO defeat. I said in the live chat during that live stream, and somebody in the chat room might have suggested it, so I can't claim that I am the one who originally came up with the idea. I think it might have been someone in the live chat that suggested it while I was doing that live stream. But they suggested that Johnny Fisher go the Misfits route. And it instantly sounded like a great idea to me. Because here we have a guy who has a fan base but isn't very good and had just been exposed for not being very good. What do you do with a guy like that? You're not going to be able to resell him the same way that you sold him first time because the cat's out the bag now. Next time he attempts to get a big purse, he's actually going to have to step up. He's not going to be able to fight cream puffs and get the kind of checks he was receiving before. And when you do put him in a step up again, he's probably going to get chinned again. So the best solution that I can see is he goes the Misfits route. Goes into Misfits with his dad, with the Chinese food, with the Bosch and all that type of stuff. He's perfect for that type of crowd. His dad's perfect for it. Yeah? He can get some big paydays in fights that he's more likely to win. Imagine Johnny Fisher versus that Chase Damore guy. Probably chin him in a couple of rounds. So, I think he should go the Misfits route. And beyond Misfits, I think he should try and target Jake Paul. I've been saying this, as I say, since the loss to Dave Allen. He should try and target Jake Paul. And in fact, when Jake Paul loses to AJ, and we'll talk about that fight a little bit later on, I think Johnny Bosch should call out Jake Paul after the fight. So those are my thoughts on good old Johnny Bosch, Johnny Fisher. His performance was poor in every way other than showing heart. His performance was poor. And yeah, that's where I think he goes from here. Should be looking at Misfits, then targeting Jake Paul. If he tries to continue down the road of being a real, serious boxer, it's going to end disastrously bad for him. He wants to put food on the table. He wants to help out his dad. And, you know, everyone knows the story of his family being in debt and what have you. If he wants to continue to help them in the best way possible, going the real boxing route is not the way, bro. You're just going to get hurt and you're going to lose value and you're not going to be paid the same kind of money. You need to start going the Tommy Fury route. Fighting YouTubers. That's the way. And I get it. From an ego perspective, he might not like that. I completely get it. All I can do is talk as an outsider looking in, putting all of sentimentality and what have you aside. Shout out to everyone joining the live chat right now. Big up Striker. Big up Isaac Blings. Isaac says, I think this is too harsh on someone putting a lot of effort into something they love. I don't think it's harsh because I just don't think he's good enough to make the kind of money that he's used to going the real boxing route. See, they could sell him as a world-class prospect before, and that's part of the reason that he was drawing such a crowd. Yeah? As loyal as the Essex fans are, part of their loyalty was based on the potential that they perceived him to have. Now that the cat is out of the bag, and he's basically lost to Dave Allen twice, you're not going to be able to sell him like that again. The only way he's going to be able to get the kind of purses that he wants to get is if he steps up, and when he does step up, in my view, he's going to get chinned again. Better that he goes the Misfits route, where there are far more winnable fights for relatively big purses. It's safer for him to go that way. And if he cleans up in Misfits, fights Jake Paul, beats him too, I'm not saying he necessarily would, but if he does, then he can go back to real boxing. I'm not sure why people think that's harsh. Big up Ben Odom for the super chat. No comment on that one, but much appreciated for the support. Big up Ben Odom every time. Katie says, hey, we're not equal, unfortunately, so Johnny doesn't have it in him. Chili Beef says, can you check out my super chat? It was charged but didn't pop up. Yeah, it hasn't popped up here, bro. Hasn't popped up. So I'm not sure what's going on with YouTube. YouTube does some weird stuff sometimes with these super chats that people complain about. I don't know what to say. I'm checking in both the viewer activity tab and the fan funding tab, and it hasn't come up, bro. Big up Chili Beef every time. Thoughts on Vidal Riley? Well, he's signed with KSI, and KSI is no longer the owner of Misfits, as I understand it. But I'm very disappointed with KSI. Vidal Riley signing with KSI. Big up Jake Jones. He says, yes, Hatman, do you think it's a sad state of affairs when you've got Fisher on actual boxing cards? These promoters will try to sell the public a doo-doo, let's just call it. Surely even the diehards can see he's totally poo. Apparently not. No, I'm sure they can. Why did Fisher go for a takedown? He was trying to survive. I can't even hate him for going for that takedown. But yeah, to finish my thought on Vidal Riley, I'm disappointed because him signing with KSI, to me, shows that he's more interested in making money. And look, he's a prize fighter. He's supposed to be interested in making money. But what I'm saying is he's totally interested in making money and doesn't care at all about trying to prove that he's the best cruiserweight in the world. That's what I take from him signing with KSI. He's going back to where he basically started. It's as if Vidal Riley sees that influencer space as a safe space. Do you know what I mean? It's very disappointing. Shout out to George for the super chat. He says, there is only one Tyson Fury. Lord have mercy. Big up Chili Beef. He says, it's all good, but I dropped you a 10 as I missed your last few ones. If you don't have the money, drop me a message after the stream. Yeah, it hasn't come through, bro. I've got $5 from Matt, $2 from Matt, $5 from Matt. So that's 12, £10 from Ben Odom. So that's a £10, obviously. $2 from George, the Last Dragon. Big up, George. And Mark Odell dropped £2. So no, a 10 hasn't come through. Chili Beef. Big up Mark Odell. He says the Fishers have mouths to feed their own. Well, Big Johnny Fisher, right? He's got Chinese food to buy. Now, the amount he must spend on Chinese food is crazy. Warren Williams says he's not the best. Let's be real. Riley would get knocked out by Jai. He was at Rant's last fight, or fight last night. He just likes being on camera. Well, I think that Riley's a good fighter. And when Jai Opetaia moves up, the division's wide open. And in fact, the other cruiserweight champions are acting like Jai Opetaia doesn't exist anyway. So I think Vidal Riley is not very far off being able to mix it with the Ramirez's of the world, and maybe even, we'll see about Benavidez, but I think Vidal Riley's got a lot of potential. But somehow, he doesn't have that kind of ambition regarding boxing legacy, it would seem. He's just more interested in the bag. It is what it is. Tony S says, I think Vidal will probably fight Ty Mitchell. That'd be unfortunate. All right, let's move on then from Johnny Bosch. I have talked a little bit about the rest of the card and given you my brief thoughts on it. So you had Shabazz Massoud beating Peter McGrail and Conor Walker beating Pat McCormack. Pat McCormack and Peter McGrail were two of Eddie Hearn's next, can we call them would-be stars? There was an interesting conversation in my Element group earlier on today. A couple of the members were saying that Eddie Hearn isn't very good at spotting talent because he signs the likes of McGrail and Pat McCormack when he should have been signing the likes of, Moses Atauma, etc., if we're talking about British talent, next generation. And my response was, I don't think Eddie Hearn is necessarily that bad at spotting talent. I think what is really going on with him is that, just like his dad, he doesn't think like a traditional big boxing promoter. His dad is an accountant, and he has instilled in Eddie the accountant's mentality. It's all about the numbers. You see, traditional big boxing promoters play the long game, and they're willing to take big gambles with a load of money. Eddie Hearn's even spoken about this. This is how traditionally in boxing big promoters do it. They're willing to play the long game with big gambles, huge investments when they think they've found a special fighter. Okay? Eddie Hearn doesn't like to do that, because what happens when a special fighter turns pro is there's all the other promoters clamoring for their signature. And what that does is it pushes their price up. So by the time the fighter decides to sign with someone, they've got an enormous pro contract. They've got a certain amount that they're supposed to be paid per fight. And therefore the promoter is probably going to lose money on them, at least for the first couple of years on several shows, right? They're hoping to cash in on that fighter down the line when they start doing pay-per-views and stuff like that, and that's when they recoup. That is the way big boxing promoters have traditionally done it over the decades. But the Hearns don't like doing it that way, because look at the things that can go wrong. Even if the guy's got the amateur background and he's got the power and the speed, maybe he gets injured. Maybe he turns out to be not as good as you thought he was. So if you listen to the interviews or watch the interviews of fighters, talented fighters from around the world, not just the UK, when they've turned over, you will usually hear that Matchroom offered them less money than everybody else. Yes, even with Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua was offered a lot more money to sign with Frank Warren. And there might have been some other people as well than he was offered to sign with Matchroom. Yes, Matchroom did not make him the biggest offer. I think Matchroom have even admitted that. They didn't make him the biggest offer. So Matchroom are always trying to operate within a particular budget. They don't like splashing out enormous amounts of money. Now, when Matchroom were helping to launch DAZN in the US, that was different, okay? That was more so DAZN splashing out money. But Matchroom, under normal operating circumstances, they don't like to splash out big money for people just turning over pro. Expensive talent. They don't like doing that. They prefer to let somebody else spend that money, build the fighter up, and if they're any good, Matchroom will try to poach them somewhere down the line. That's what Matchroom prefer to do. Yeah. And to finish my thought on Anthony Joshua, yeah, they signed with him. They signed him even though, partly because AJ was willing to take less money, right? He believed in Matchroom's vision and the fact they had the Sky thing going on and whatnot. So he took less money for the initial signing and he was fast-tracked. If AJ had signed with Frank Warren, I want to guess he would have been moved more slowly and would have been moved more sensibly and given more time to develop. But because Matchroom want to recoup immediately, right, they fast-tracked the hell out of him. And they stuck him in there for a world title. Okay, it was against the soft touch in Charles Martin, but once you're at world level, you're then going to be forced to fight world level fighters. So they fast-tracked him because they wanted to get that money back immediately or as soon as possible. That's why they started putting him in pay-per-views at an unprecedented stage of his career, virtually, right? British title fight against Dillian Whyte is on pay-per-view. You know, so Matchroom don't like splashing out a load of money. They don't like these investments where it's going to take many, many years to get a return. They like quick returns, okay? That is why they haven't signed a lot of the blue chip prospects worldwide. Yeah, that's why they haven't signed them, because they don't want to spend all that money. They'd rather somebody else build them up and spend the money than they poach them somewhere down the line. Yeah? Instead, what Matchroom do is they get these fighters who are a lot cheaper. One, because they're not as good, but they have some type of amateur background to them. Two, because they're smaller guys like your Pat McCormacks, like your Peter McGrails. Smaller fighters tend to be cheaper. Yeah? And I'm sure Eddie Hearn knows that these guys are not super duper talents. Yeah? But he tries to sell them as such. And then you get extreme examples like Johnny Bosch, who was just a pure gimmick fighter. Somebody in the Element group said, in fact, let me do him the courtesy of remembering who it was that said it. Just going to open up my Element chat for a second here. It's loading. God, it's taking its time to load. Due Diligence, I think it was. Let me just double check. Yeah, Due Diligence, I believe it was, said that Matchroom, yeah, Due Diligence, that's his username. Matchroom want the biggest hype for the cheapest price. They want the fighter that's going to give them the most hype for the cheapest price. And that's why they signed the likes of McGrail, Pat McCormack and whatnot. Because these guys are not that expensive compared to genuine blue chip prospects. Okay? But they have their little amateur background and whatnot. And they've got the little local support. So they know they can sell tickets with them and hype them up to be the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah, the Hearns think like accountants. It's always about the bottom line. And once you realize the way they think, then their actions start to make more sense. It doesn't mean their actions are always going to pay off, but you can see what they're trying to do. You can see their method once you understand the mindset, once you understand the business philosophy that they have. Yeah, they want a sure thing. They're trying to run a solvent business, I mean, a profit-making business first and foremost, before they think about what's best for fighter development. See, normally promoters, big promoters, will sacrifice what's best for their business in the short term for what's best for the fighter's development, because that means that in the long term, they might be able to profit more for that fighter. But it's a gamble. profit more from that fighter. But it's a gamble. The Hearns don't like to do that. They don't like to do that. They want to see those profits come soon or immediately. Yeah? They put the health of their business first. They prioritize it first. Even the short-term health of their business first over what's best for their fighters. That's why certain fighters get rushed. Do you know what I mean? Whereas other fighters, your Ben Whittaker's somebody they poached, right? They're going to move in more slowly to create more hype and whatnot, so that when they do put him in with someone good, they can really cash in. But he's already built up to a certain level. He already has an enormous Instagram following. So since they've already got, from a PR perspective, a fighter that's already built with Ben Whittaker, I'm sure they've paid a lot to sign him. They want to, put him in with some pies first before stepping him up, because they figure they can make quite a bit of money just putting him in with pies over the short term because of the profile he's already built. So, yeah, that's my take on, and nothing against McGrail or Pat McCormack, but yeah, to me, they were just never anything more than standard or slightly above standard UK prospects. I looked at Pat McCormack and I thought, what, another Luke Campbell at best? You know? Anyway, let's move on. Shout out to President Brush. Oh, shout out to Ben Odom. I missed some super chats here while I was ranting. Big up JR. He says, Fisher actually went down in my estimation and I thought he was trash beforehand. Poor Johnny Fisher. I think he's probably suffering some kind of neurological effects from the Dave Allen KO, because it was a devastating KO. I want to say that his punch resistance seems to have deteriorated since because of that devastating KO. And that can happen with a lot of fighters. Big up JR. Big up George the Last Dragon. He says, you don't care, but does Paul last against AJ? I'll come on to that later on, but my short answer is, I think he does last. I think that's actually a long fight. I don't think AJ is going to blast him out in a couple of rounds. As I say, I'll talk about that more in depth later, but that's my short answer. Big up Ben Odom for the super chat. He says, Eddie Hearn put AJ in with Ruiz, complete no-no. It was Ruiz who made Holyfield retire after a sparring session. Well, I do disagree regarding the Ruiz thing, a complete no-no, because Anthony Joshua was a world champion. I get what you're saying, Ben, right, from a managerial perspective, but if I'm thinking from a fan perspective, right, the heavyweight champion should be willing to take on anybody. The heavyweight champion shouldn't be, or, world champion in any weight class, shouldn't be carefully managed when they're champion. It should be open season at that point. If they're going to be holding a belt, calling themselves world champion, they should be put in there against anyone. And so, the fact he went in there against Ruiz and got chinned, yeah, it does show the limitations of Eddie Hearn's matchmaking ability. But I always looked at it from a fan perspective more so than a managerial perspective, because he was heavyweight champion. So you should be able to, if you are the best, you should be able to prove it against anyone. Big up Ben Odom for the super chat. Big up President Brush. Says, do you think Queensberry offered Whittaker more? I'm not sure. Possibly. But again, Whittaker was already a built fighter in terms of profile. Millions of social media followers, viral clips all over social media, places like Instagram. He had those fights with Liam Cameron, the controversy, and then dealing with Cameron with ease the second time around. So his profile's already built to a certain point. So from the accountant mind of the Hearns, they're already looking at the guy's socials because they analyze your socials. The Hearns, oh yeah, they look at your socials. They look at the kind of numbers you got on socials and they think, well, that can equate to money in the bank for us. So since you've got a proven record of being able to draw a crowd, Ben Whittaker I'm talking about here, the Hearns would have been willing to pay a bit more, do you know what I mean, than somebody just turning over pro. Did they offer more than Warren? I'm not sure. Big up President Brush. Big up Anthony Palmer for the super chat. He says, big up Hatman, watching Usyk Fury while I listen. Have you got any favorite heavyweight entrances of all time? Foreman's against Ali for me. He just ran. Favorite heavyweight entrances. I guess Mike Tyson's against Michael Spinks was a good one, with that weird avant-garde ominous music against Spinks. That was a good one. I always like Lennox Lewis's entrances to Bob Marley, Crazy Bald Head. That track. Yeah, those are a couple. Big up Anthony Palmer. Have you got any favorites? Other than, or any other favorites, should I say, other than Foreman against Ali? Wow, Warren Williams says, Ben Whittaker's got the third biggest Insta followers after Joshua and Luke. They'll use him up and cash him out when he's no longer useless. All right. Where was I? Where had we got to? Yeah, the Eddie Hearn Monaco card. Reading out some super chats. All right, let's move on from the Eddie Hearn Monaco card and talk about Jai Opetaia versus Hussein Sin Cara. How many of you guys saw this fight? Hussein Sin Cara, unheralded but unbeaten, 23-0, based in Germany, 40 years of age. He got stopped by Jai Opetaia, knocked out cold in the 8th round, but not before giving Opetaia plenty to think about, particularly when he managed to hurt Opetaia. What did you guys think of the fight, the performance, and does it change your perception of the Australian? Shout out to Grizz for the super chat. He says, don't you think Hearn believed in Fisher? Hell no. I absolutely do not think that Hearn believed in Fisher at any point. I think Eddie Hearn knew exactly what he had, which was a gimmick fighter. Perhaps he hoped that the gimmick fighter could at least reach British title level, but I don't think he ever truly believed that he was dealing with the world-class prospect that he claimed he was dealing with. That's my personal opinion. Do you disagree, Grizz, excuse me. If you do, that's all good, but that's my view. Eddie Hearn knew, in my view, what Johnny Fisher was all along, and he tried to sell the public mutton dressed as lamb. What? I hope you're not serious, and I hope that's inaccurate information there, NSGS, because that sounds terrible. I'm not even sure if I want to repeat that without confirming it, but that sounds terrible. I hope Sin Cara didn't suffer those kind of injuries. Striker says it wasn't a good performance by Jai, but hopefully it entices these guys to fight him. And that right there is the silver lining in that particular cloud. Oh, wow. People are saying it is true. He has career-ending injuries. That is very, very, very unfortunate. A broken neck. That's crazy. Obviously, brain bleeds are a relatively rare but very well-known injury that can happen in boxing. But a broken neck, that's insane. I don't think I've ever heard of that before. Somebody suffering a broken neck from a knockout in a boxing ring. NSGS says Opetaia got a broken eye socket too. Oh, okay, they're saying it's a minor brain bleed. So kind of similar to what happened with that guy that Lawrence Okolie fought. Do you remember? I think he was from Australia. Do you remember that Aussie or Kiwi who Lawrence Okolie fought? I can't remember the guy's name now. He had a real good chin, but he suffered some kind of minor brain bleed as well, and that ended his career. David Light, thank you, Ocean Blue. Yeah, David Light. I don't think David Light had to have, brain surgery or anything like that. I don't think he's disabled, but he suffered some kind of minor brain bleed, and then his career was finished. Tony S says brain bruise, I heard. Well, a bruise on the brain is just a concussion. That's what a concussion is. It's when the brain is bruised. But yeah, Jai Opetaia, as Striker said, the silver lining in this particular cloud of the quote-unquote bad performance. I mean, Opetaia was very harsh on his own performance. The silver lining is that maybe it'll entice the Ramirez's, who claims he didn't know who Opetaia was until recently, to fight him. Because it's shameless the way that Jai Opetaia is being ducked. It's one of the most shameless things I've seen in boxing for a long time. Big up Quadruple A. He says, what do you think about Pacquiao Jr.? I've only seen bits and pieces of him, but I haven't been impressed, I have to be honest. He doesn't have the athleticism of his dad. Does he have the kind of power? That remains to be seen, but the athleticism certainly isn't there. Pacquiao had fantastic athleticism, crazy hand speed, power, aggression, and so on. DJ says 5 of Opetaia's last 6 opponents have been taken to hospital afterwards. Sugar Ray Robinson once killed a man in the ring. And he was asked subsequently, doesn't he feel bad about hurting people? And his answer was something to the effect of, this is the hurt business. If you're afraid of hurting people, you need to take up a different profession. This is the hurt business. And I say that because I think that's always going to be Jai Opetaia's mentality, right? He's a blood man. Not that he, after the fight, would be happy that his opponent has ended up in a bad way. But when he's in the ring, and I'm sure when he signs for his next fight, I don't think he'll be one of those kind of people that's worried about the kind of damage he's going to do to someone. He's a blood man. What do you think about Pacquiao Jr., Quadruple A? You think he's any good? Yeah, I agree, NSGS. Johnny Bosch is going to get very badly hurt if he steps up again. I agree with that. I didn't see the female boxing in the Monte Carlo card. Tony S says, I think Opetaia gets found out at heavyweight. I think he would struggle against a long rangey heavyweight like a Collie. Yeah, Opetaia is obviously a great puncher. He's athletic, he's fast, he's aggressive as hell. But he doesn't have the technical acumen of an Alexander Usyk. He doesn't. And he doesn't have, I don't think, and look, I'm not saying Opetaia is chinny at all. But I don't think he has the kind of chin that Usyk has, nor Evander Holyfield, based upon what I've seen in his cruiserweight fights of late. Now, the moment against Sin Cara where he got rocked, I don't think he was that badly hurt. I think balance had a lot to do with it, as well as the punch. But he did get noticeably hurt against David Naika. That wasn't a balance thing. He was like clearly wobbled there. I don't think it will necessarily be that much of an issue at cruiserweight, but stepping up to heavyweight, that could become an issue. Paladin says, Usyk's chin is absolutely crazy. Usyk has got a very good chin, but on top of having a very good chin, he's also got a fantastic defense. So there's the fantastic defense to begin with, which is far better than Opetaia's defense. And if you manage to get past that somehow, he's got a great chin too. So he's got all bases covered. Yeah? Usyk has got all bases covered. Mark Hatch says, why isn't Opetaia trying to fight Badou Jack if Zerdo is ducking? He is. He's tried to fight Badou Jack, and he's tried to fight Zerdo, and he tried to fight Chris Billum-Smith. He's been trying to fight all of them. But all of them have been shamelessly ducking him for years. Yeah, I've been saying that for the longest, Amali. Opetaia wouldn't be out in society if he weren't a boxer. That's why I say, thank God for boxing. Thank God that professional boxing exists. So that Opetaia is not a menace to society. Thank God we've got an avenue where individuals as bloodthirsty as that can do something productive. Quadruple A says Pacquiao Senior, didn't like his performance in his pro debut and said he would take over training for him. Do you think that'll make him better, getting knowledge from a GOAT every day? Normally, I would say not necessarily, but given the fact that it's his dad, then maybe, because his dad is obviously going to have a similar body type to him, but having seen Pacquiao Jr. so far, he doesn't have his dad's athleticism, but there are going to be some, obviously, physical similarities, and he's obviously raised his son, so perhaps he's got a good idea of what he can and can't do. But at the same time as all that, sometimes fathers will look at their sons with, they won't look at their sons objectively sometimes. It's like Chris Eubanks Sr., early on in his son's career, he was saying he was going to be better than Floyd Mayweather. Junior, not senior, right? Floyd Mayweather Jr. So sometimes dads, parents in general, can find it difficult to detach emotion from the situation and just look at their child objectively for what they really are. So it just depends whether Pacquiao is going to be able to do that with his son. Mark Hatch says Usyk has crazy eyes too. Yeah, but Usyk's eyes are kind of crazy in a funny way, right? Opetaia's eyes are crazy in a serial killer type way. Not in a funny way. You know what I mean? Usyk's got like this mischievous, how can I describe? I'm just going to call it a mischievous look in his eyes, right? Whereas Opetaia is just like a stone cold killer. That's the way his eyes look. Yeah, Usyk has playful eyes, mischievous, playful eyes. Whereas Opetaia is just a stone cold killer. And he can't help it. He ain't putting it on. As a stone killer. All right, so let's move on then from Opetaia. I think, and I really hate to say this, I think Opetaia and his team are a little delusional, thinking they're going to be able to become undisputed champion at cruiserweight. I hope I'm wrong, but I think they're a little delusional because I just don't see the other champions playing ball. I think Opetaia's got the talent, the ability to become undisputed cruiserweight champion. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I just don't think the other champions are going to play ball. And I think there's some hesitance for Opetaia to move up to heavyweight because they know how difficult it's going to be. So I feel for him. Anyway, let's move on. Now, I did not see this fight between Isaac Cruz and Lamont Roach. I only saw the highlights. So you guys are going to have to fill me in on what you thought about it. The highlights mainly show Pitbull Cruz knocking Lamont Roach down. His glove touched the canvas, landed big shots throughout. The highlights make it out that if you got the impression of what happened in the fight from the highlights, you'd think that Pitbull Cruz should have got the victory. The fight was officially scored a draw. And from what I'm seeing online, the fan reactions, they think that Lamont Roach was hard done by. And that he actually deserved to get the W and not a draw. And that Pitbull Cruz was fortunate to get that result. But because he's the A side in this scenario, that's why it happened. Let me know what you guys thought about the fight. Because like I said, I haven't yet seen the fight. I've only seen the highlights. So you guys fill me in and let me know what you think. NSGS says Roach 100% won. Encircled thinks Roach won. Isaac thinks it was Pitbull that got it. NSGS says, okay, Cruz got a point deduction for holding in headbutts. Paladin Polka says Roach got jobbed again. Every other second was Pitbull being outboxed. Striker says Roach deserved it. Hatman 115, 111 on my card. So, just like elsewhere, most of you guys also are of the view that Lamont Roach did enough to win the fight and was hard done by. You got Jake Jones. He says, Hatman, who do you think had the coolest stare? What do you mean coolest? Or do you mean coldest? I want to say Jai Opetaia is right up there for the most just psychotic stare of all time. In any weight class. His stare is crazy, bro. It never switches off. Like his eyes are like that constantly. You know? Like he's just got a screw loose. Yeah, Foreman had a great stare, but it's something he would put on when he was going into fight mode, right? Jai Opetaia has that stare constantly, bro. Just constantly when he's walking around, when he's in the gym, when he's doing interviews, when he's gearing up to fight, when he's in the ring. That, 100-yard stare never leaves him. One of the funniest stares I ever saw, you guys can look this up, and it really was funny, was Jose Roberto when he was facing off with Mike Tyson during the referee's instructions before the opening bell of their fight. Go have a look at Jose Roberto's stare against Mike Tyson. That was literally hilarious. You'll laugh out loud. He was trying his best to look as intimidating as possible. But it just looked hilarious. It just looked funny. Jose Roberto was a Cuban heavyweight from back in the days. Okay, Active Movement says, I had Pitbull 1 round up, but think a draw is fair. Some rounds could have went either way. Roach gave the fight away. Okay, different take there. Shout out to, is it Ibizba? Rather than Ibiza or Ibiza. Ibizba. Put a super chat. He says, what's good, Hatman? Your podcast is very insightful for a 19-year-old youngin' like myself. You've got knowledge way beyond boxing. Big up. And I'm glad you're enjoying the Patreon content. Big up yourself too. I try to share what I've learned throughout my life and hope that it's of some benefit to others. More than anything, I just like to get people thinking. Because, of course, I don't claim that everything I say is going to be bang on the money. I just put ideas out there. I mean, some things, obviously, I say I'll give names, dates, places, facts, and figures. But other times, I'll speculate about a lot of stuff. Just get people thinking. And, of course, in other instances, I'm talking about personal experiences and things I've learned and whatnot. And I like to pass it on. So, yeah. Big up for the super chat, and I'm glad you're enjoying the Patreon content. Mark Odell says, are those sausages done, Hatman? I should say a pause right there. But yes, those beef sausages that I put on the barbecue the other day, yes, I made sure they were well cooked. Just put some ketchup on the side and I ate them just like that. No carbs involved. That's an interesting take, Jumperton. He says, Vidal run into misfits so he won't have to fight Pat Brown. That's interesting. Because I do think, see, Pat Brown is somebody, but Pat Brown is, how can I describe him? A little bit of an anomaly when it comes to Matchroom, because they don't normally go out of their way to sign blue chip prospects like that. But I think they might have something with Pat Brown. I think that Pat Brown might actually be what Matchroom were pretending Pat McCormack and the other guy that lost over the weekend were. I think Pat Brown might actually be the goods. Yeah? And that's an interesting thing to say, that maybe Vidal's running to misfits so he won't have to fight Pat Brown. That's interesting. Because, to paraphrase Jim Watt, Pat Brown has got a solid look about him. He's got a solid look about him. I miss Jim Watt. I thought he was a great commentator. He was underappreciated by British boxing fans at the time. He was constantly criticized and harangued by the British public for apparently being biased against British fighters. He never was. He was being objective. They were really upset at him for not being biased in favor of British fighters. But oh, how the tables are turned, because now the public just complain about how the commentators are biased in favor of British fighters. That's why I say Jim Watt was underappreciated in his time during his Sky years. Malik says, Pat Brown name just ain't hitting though. That's a fact. Yeah, Bear Bucci looks in shape, but all of his fighting ability is gone. Did you see his comeback fight? He looked terrible, as you would expect a man of his age to look. All right, let's move on then from Pitbull versus Roach. I didn't speak about this at the time, but it was mentioned in some previous live streams. I mean, I mean to say I didn't make a dedicated video about this at the time. But Anthony Joshua, on his socials, has been posting his weight. And here you see he was weighing 110.6 kilos. People are saying this is under the 245-pound weight limit. And there was somebody, I think it was Waved, who found that quite funny, because I've been, talking about whether AJ has been foolish to accept this weight stipulation, given the fact he's never had to make weight before in his life. To clarify my position on it, I never said AJ can't make 245. My whole thing has been, can he make 245 and still be strong? Because making 245 at the age of 36 is different than making 245 at the age of 33 or 32. Do you know what I mean? It gets more difficult to shed the weight as you get older. Now, I'm not saying he can't make it healthy. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying here. I'm asking the question, can he make it healthily? Yeah. He's already down around the 245 mark or just below right now. 243.8. Well, yeah, he put 243.8 there. And AJ's got this weird fascination with gangsters and stuff like that, because as you see there, AJ says, they must have forgot I'm used to dealing with weight and scales. AJ used to push a little bit of ganja in Watford. And now he's acting like he's Pablo Escobar or something. I'm used to dealing with weight and scales. Yeah, okay. Okay, Pablo Escobar. Anyway, if he can make the weight safely, healthily, where he's still strong and he hasn't lost anything from coming in below 245, then that's obviously a good thing for him. I still don't think Anthony Joshua is going to blast Jake Paul out in a couple of rounds, though. So, here we have Scott Welch, who was a heavyweight contender back in the 1990s. He fought Henry Akin one day for the WBO belt back then. He lost on points. He had those fights with James Oyebola, another huge Nigerian heavyweight. The first one he lost, and he was ahead in that fight. He was winning that fight. It was a real crazy battle. But he got knocked out. Oyebola caught him with an enormous right hand and knocked him out. In a rematch, Welch got his revenge. Just to give you some backstory on Scott Welch. His son, who unfortunately is nowhere near as good as he was, just got chinned by Richard Riakporhe. When was it? A couple of weekends ago. So Scott Welch is predicting that the AJ-Jake Paul fight will go 7 or 8 rounds. And as you can see, IFL are calling it a shocking prediction. Well, to give you some form, or to give you an example of Scott Welch's form with regards to picking AJ fights, he thought that AJ would beat Ngannou well. He didn't think AJ would have too many issues with Francis Ngannou. Same as me. My prediction video is still up for Ngannou. For me, at the time I said it, AJ's going to have no problems in this fight against Francis Ngannou. Ngannou's got a guard that you could drive 2 trucks through at the same time. And he's not going to come in fat, overweight, out of shape like Luke Partridge. He's going to take it like a true professional, like a consummate pro, and he's going to exploit all of Ngannou's defensive frailties and win the fight without any issue. Scott Welch thought the same, and he's also thinking the same as me with regards to the Anthony Joshua-Jake Paul fight. I think this is going to go rounds. I think Jake Paul's going to run around the ring. I think Anthony Joshua is going to be quite conservative with his offense. He'll poke some jabs out there, right hands to the body, right hands to the chest here and there. I think AJ's going to treat it like the first sparring session back after a long layoff. Yeah? Normally, when you haven't been in the gym for a while, and obviously AJ's been sparring, so I'm not saying it's going to be his first time lacing up gloves and punching someone in the head since the Dubois fight. I'm saying he's going to approach it like that, as if it was his first sparring session after a year or something. Anyone who's actually done that, who's been out the ring for a year or more, when you have your first sparring session, you're kind of cautious. Your body's forgotten what it's like to get punched in the face. Yeah? So you just want to take it nice and easy, cautious, keep things simple, work behind your jab, not try and get too ambitious. I think that's what AJ is going to do against Jake Paul. I don't think he's really going to force the issue. He's going to try and win the rounds by doing pretty much the bare minimum. Collecting that paycheck. Maybe he stops Jake Paul late, or maybe it goes the distance and AJ gets a ton of criticism for it. But AJ's bank balance is healthier, even more healthy than it already is as a result of that fight. And maybe it pushes Luke Partridge to sign the contract and fight him thereafter. Because Partridge has been curiously hesitant to fight AJ over the past year. Curiously, because AJ's been looking, well, in AJ's last fight, he looked terrible, right? He got chinned, dominated by Daniel Dubois. So yeah, that's my take on AJ Jake Paul. I think AJ is going to be cautious. He's going to stick to the basics. He's going to treat it like a sparring session for the first time in a year. And he'll just try and secure the bag without extending himself. I don't think he's particularly concerned about being slagged off for not knocking out Jake Paul. But what do you guys think? Ishmael says, Akoli softened up Jake for AJ. Has he even had the opportunity to do that? Or have Jake Paul's trainers been jumping in every time Akoli lands anything resembling a half-decent shot to stop it and say, whoa, 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 go easy. Trolls About It says, if Fury came in shape, would he have still struggled with Ngannou? I don't think so. I don't think he would have blasted Ngannou out the way AJ did, but I don't think he would have struggled if he'd come in shape. I don't think so. Yep, I agree with Striker. Paul will be skittish, moving around. He won't stand there and get decapitated like Francis. Yeah, Paul's going to move around. He's going to try and get a gauge of AJ's speed. If he feels like AJ's a lot slower than him, then he's going to try and sling some big right hands over at some point. But early on, he's going to be moving around all over the place. Jake says, you've mentioned a few times about your dislike for Adam Smith. I can't ever remember the reason why. Not asking this because I'm a fan, but because I think there's so many more. Bellew is one. Well, I'm certainly not saying Adam Smith is the worst UK commentator. The UK commentator I go on about the most is Darren Barker. I think he's terrible. I think Darren Barker is just absolutely terrible. And Mike Costello as well. He's now apparently retired. I thought he was terrible. Adam Smith. Why do I not particularly care for Adam Smith? It's a lot of the nonsense he comes out with. You know, like the stuff he said about Tony Bellew's tattoo. And and all the virtue signaling. You know, when they first started doing women's boxing on Sky and Adam Smith was saying, and they're better than the men, they're better than the men, and all this like ridiculous stuff. Yeah, it's all that kind of silly virtue signaling that turns me off. And also, I grew up listening to Ian Darke, and Adam Smith has admitted in the past that Ian Darke was kind of his mentor at Sky. And he basically copied Ian Darke's commentary style, or attempted to. But when you've heard the original style, the knockoff imitation is never going to hit the same. Do you know what I mean? So whenever I hear Adam Smith, I just hear a knockoff imitation of Ian Darke. People are saying Jake Paul has a black eye from sparring Lawrence Okolie. Big up Ben Odom. You know, that's from the first Mike Tyson Razor Ruddock fight. Oh, that was controversial. And Lennox Lewis was on commentary and he said, definitely controversial. Lewis pronouncing the S. Oh, definitely controversial. Yeah, that was seen as a controversial stoppage at the time. Today it wouldn't be seen as that controversial, because Razor Ruddock was getting like clobbered with loads of clean shots and reeling back towards the ropes. I mean, he was still a bit premature, but he'd been down, he wasn't winning the fight. But it was very controversial at the time. Marco Dell says Lennox Lewis is pretty bland on commentary. That he is. I've never liked Lennox Lewis as a commentator at all. Never liked him as a commentator at all. Paladin Polka says Ruddock had that Fury chin down from every clean shot. But similar to, other than in the Lennox Lewis fight, I'm talking about during his, prime years, Razor Ruddock would always get up very quickly and recover extremely fast from heavy knockdowns. When he got knocked down by Bone Crusher Smith, you would have thought he'd be out cold. And the most extreme example is when he got dropped by Tommy Morrison. I mean, you literally, the way he went down and his head hit the canvas, you thought there's no way he's still conscious. He got up at like 4. I mean, he was unreal. Unreal. Like Razor Ruddock's powers of recovery were crazy back in the days. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Trollsabad says Tyson took his punch resistance away. I totally disagree. Because he was dropped heavy before the Mike Tyson fights. And he was dropped heavy and recovered by Tommy Morrison, which was after the Mike Tyson fights. So no, I disagree with that. It's only in the Lennox Lewis fight where he got dropped and wasn't able to recover. But subsequent to that, when he fought Tommy Morrison and got hit with an enormous left hook that literally would have knocked out a horse, went down hard, his head bounced off the canvas, and he got up at about 4. Crazy. Like absolutely crazy. He had no right to be getting up that quick or getting up at all from that kind of hook. That was a madness. So Bone Crusher Smith was down at least twice before he fought Mike Tyson. One of them was against Bone Crusher Smith. He also got stopped by a journeyman called David Jaco. That was his first defeat. That was several years before he fought Mike Tyson. He was stopped by a journeyman called David J. Cole. But there were two people that dropped it. I don't think he was dropped in the J. Cole fight, but I think he was stopped on his feet. Don't quote me on that. But he was dropped by someone else. Bone Crusher Smith dropped him. And someone else dropped him. I forget who it was now. But the Bone Crusher Smith knockdown was a heavy, heavy knockdown. Anyway, let's move on from AJ Jake Paul to the main topic of this live stream. And I want to take you through it step by step here. This was in January this year. You can see the date right below the video. January 13, 2025. Luke Partridge puts out this video on social media announcing his retirement from boxing. To give you word for word quotes. He said, "I'd like to announce my retirement from boxing. It's been a blast. I've loved every single minute of it." And he'd go on to say, even Dick Turpin wore a mask. And that was obviously a pathetic attempt to continue to claim that he was robbed in the Usyk fights. That's what that was. But other people, including Gareth A. Davis, because Gareth A. Davis is still secretly a Fury fanboy, rather than read this for what it obviously was, the Dick Turpin comment, he tried to somehow construe it as Fury saying he's made loads of money from boxing, so he's, ducking out now like Dick Turpin. Obviously, he wasn't saying that, Gareth. It was yet another bitter comment about this non-existent robbery against Usyk. So he literally, out of his own mouth, announced his retirement from boxing. I say retirement, quote unquote retirement, because this guy's retired so many times and come back. We all knew he was going to come back again, despite the nonsense from people like Spencer Brown and various other members of his team that, "Oh no, I think he's retired for good." Yeah, right. Despite all this silly nonsense from those people, despite silly nonsense from Fury himself, this was 1 month ago. 1 month ago, Partridge said, "I'm going to stay retired. 1 billion wouldn't move the needle. 1 billion wouldn't get me out of retirement." Literally a month ago, he was saying this. And now, he posts this. Look here. He said, "The king must return to his throne." He doesn't know how to spell throne. He's got spelling like Billy Joe Saunders, this guy. He says, "There is a long and lonely road that only I can walk on. But after the long and hard battle awaits immortality. God's fighting one-man army." I mean, the grammar here is crazy. God's fighting one-man army. The battle was won over 2,000 years ago by a man who goes by the name of Yeshua. I guess he meant to say Yeshua. "In his holy name, I march forward," 2026. So, Luke Partridge evoking Jesus Christ. And I've always found it extraordinary that Partridge will come out with all this Jesus talk, but his behavior is literally the opposite of what Jesus espoused in the Bible. And somehow people who claim to be Christians, who are also fans of Partridge, they never have any issue with it. It is the most extraordinary thing. Maybe they think he's like Jesus 2.0 and he's rewriting the Bible in real time. Maybe that's what they think. Maybe that's why they give him a pass. I mean, this guy, talk about using the Lord's name in vain. Nobody does it more than Luke Partridge. I'm not a religious man, by the way. I just find it bizarre that people who claim that they are religious and are believers in Christ, they see this guy behaving the way that he does and talking the way that he does and then hiding it behind this veil of Christianity, and they think he's sincere with it. Incredible. Like, look at the way he talked about Usyk in the run-up to both fights and the way he talked about him in the aftermath of both fights. Is that the way a Christian is supposed to treat a fellow Christian? He's so fake with it, man. Seriously, like, he's so fake with it, it's crazy. Real Christians are supposed to be angry with a guy like Partridge for taking the Lord's name in vain and making a mockery out of the faith. But the ones who are boxing fans apparently aren't. They aren't offended by it. Somehow they're taken in by this guy. So there you go. Partridge basically announcing his comeback, the comeback we all knew was going to happen anyway. Someone says, Partridge Christ. Warren Williams says, can I ask Catman, what do you think happens when we die? Well, I do not know what happens when we die. I suspect consciousness lives on outside of the body for some amount of time. I don't know whether it's permanent. And if that is the case, I don't know where it goes. That's my suspicion, but I don't know. I could be completely wrong. We'll all find out one day. Hopefully later rather than sooner. I completely agree, Triple R. Usyk has always seemed more genuine about being Christian. Jupiter String says the Gospel of Partridge. Literally, his fanboys, the way they hang on his every word, to them it is the Gospel of Partridge. How do I see a fight going between Jai and Benavidez? I see Jai winning that all day long. And I rate Benavidez highly. I knew he would have no problem with Anthony Yard at all. In fact, I didn't think it would be as one-sided as it was, but I was very confident that Benavidez would win. I think I said late stoppage or a clear points victory. It was obviously mid-round stoppage in a very one-sided fight. So I rate Benavidez, long story short. But I think Opetaia would be a bridge too far for him. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Afro Jam says Usyk has no issue with Fury, even calls him his friend, even when he lied about donating $1 million to Ukraine. You know, Usyk has the patience of a saint, bro. When AJ hijacked Usyk's moment after their second fight and threw the belts out the ring, Usyk would have every right to be disgusted with AJ and to cuss his clout. But somehow, he was very understanding, and he said AJ's a good guy, etc., etc. Same with Partridge. Partridge throwing his toys out the pram, claiming that Usyk only got the victory over him because of the situation in his country, which was such a scummy thing to say after the first fight. Wouldn't give Usyk any credit. Did the same after the second fight. And Usyk, again, demonstrated the patience of a saint. He's a better man than me, I tell you that. Because if someone disrespected me like that, I would never call that person my friend. But maybe Usyk takes that Christian stuff very seriously. Do you know what I mean? He likes to take the higher ground, you know? Rise above it. Love thy enemy and all that. KDS says, imagine being Christian and misspelling Yeshua. Indeed. Don't push the horses. Baz Newton says Partridge is more like Judas. I agree with that one. Paladin Poker says, when AJ apologized and dropped the humble act, I actually think he was genuine. Yeah, that's tickled me about Partridge is more like Judas. Partridge is more like King Herod, bro. He's like King Herod. That's who Partridge. If Usyk is like Jesus, then Partridge would be like King Herod, bro. Mario says, did you hear about Jake Paul might be pulling out due to a black eye? I haven't heard about that. That would be bizarre if he pulled out with a black eye. I mean, a black eye shouldn't stop a fight going ahead. It's quite normal for fighters to pick up black eyes in sparring before fights. Big up Ben Odom for the super chat. He says, Luke will be fighting at 60. Mark my words. Chisora 7. Yeah, he's going to find it hard to walk away completely. He's going to have to get like knocked out cold or something to even start considering that. Big up Ben Odom for the super chat. Shout out to Ibrahim for the super chat. He says, it's like Usyk brings out the worst in people with how good he is. Don Charles, AJ, Fury, Dubois, the list goes on. That's a great observation. Isn't that interesting? He exposes what sore losers his rivals are. That's a very interesting observation, you know. Yeah, Don Charles was so classless in the run-up to the Usyk rematch. What poor form from Don Charles. I mean, you wouldn't expect good form from him, but dear, oh dear, oh dear. Both he and his son sank to new lows in the run-up to that Usyk rematch. That was terrible. Isaac says, Hatman, were you once Christian? No, never. I've never practiced any religion. Ben Odom says, isn't Don advising Jake Paul? I've heard rumors that he is. That Don Charles is somehow involved in Jake Paul's camp. Yeah, Abdi Fox. That's right. Don Charles' alleged son, who looks Somali to me. That's why I call him Abdi. We got Mr. Luca. He says, Johnny Fisher is a real plumber. Might be better off plumbing than boxing. What religion are my family? Well, my immediate family are not religious, most of them. But my extended family would be classed as Christians, nominally Christian. Yeah, exactly that, Baz. Don Charles' son talking about pulling eyeballs out and all that. What an idiot. Indeed. And he said all that, as far as I'm concerned, out of fear. Because Usyk was like, yeah, we'll meet up and we'll have a street fight. Pick 3 of your best guys and we'll meet with 3 of my best guys. We'll have a street fight. George Fox didn't want it. But he had to save face, so he said, oh, you don't want to fight me, stick to boxing, oh, I'll pull your eyeballs out. Oh. John Fury tactics. Man didn't want it. Exactly, Mark Odell. Abdi Fox is a roadman in his own home. Ed Ellaby says, I swear Johnny F has a history degree. Yeah, that's where he took up boxing in university when he was doing his degree. He was playing for the rugby team and somehow he decided to do a bit of boxing. And that's where he got started. Yeah, Abdi Fox is a roadman in his own living room in a similar way to how Michael J. White, you know Michael J. White, the actor? He's like a fighting legend in his own mind. He's one of the most bizarre case studies I've ever seen of someone who never was a professional fighter that thinks they're as good or better than actual professional fighters who fought and won at world level. Totally bizarre. That guy talks so much rubbish, it's unreal. Michael J. White. That guy is just a fantasist. He fought in some karate tournaments as a kid. I mean, you know, karate is nothing like boxing. And that's it. That's all his, you know, fighting background. Some karate tournaments when he was young. Unbelievable. And now he's running around, oh, I would have beaten Mike Tyson, and I had a worse temper than Mike Tyson. I mean, dear, oh dear, that guy. A legend in his own mind, that guy. Exactly that, Exactamundo. He's like the black Steven Seagal. That's exactly what he is. Because Steven Seagal was like that total fantasist, right? Total fantasist. That's exactly what Michael J. White, literally the black Steven Seagal. Yep. What is my opinion on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? It seems to be very useful. I'm no expert on BJJ, but BJJ has been very effective in mixed martial arts over the decades. Obviously, the Gracie family were the ones who helped to popularize BJJ in the early years of UFC. And as I say, I'm no MMA expert, but it appears to be very useful and a formidable fighting system. Yep, that's the actual picture that Partridge uploaded to his Instagram page. Looking like some kind of holy knight invoking Jesus. NSGS says BJJ gets stomped on by the caucus wrestlers. We got Kayvon Green. He says, I'll give him a pass because he's selling a brand, I guess he meant to say. I'll tell you what, it's not a brand I'd want to buy. It's not a brand. And what kind of brand is it? When you contradict yourself all the time, lie, like, if it is a brand, a character that he's selling, what is the purpose of it? I don't get it. I don't get the angle. You're being like a liar and a gaslight. I mean, is he trying to be a villain? If he's trying to be a villain, why does he get so upset when he doesn't get support? Because most people who play the villain role, they kind of relish the fact that they're getting booed and criticized, and do you know what I mean? But Partridge seems to get upset by it. Afro Jam says most Americans are of Irish descent. No, I don't think most Americans are of Irish descent. I think the biggest European lineage of Americans is German. Most white Americans, or let me not say most white Americans, but the biggest, the most common lineage among white Americans is German. That's why America is a Germanic culture. It's, you know, they still have, they use certain German words, and at one point German was the most widely spoken language in America. And a lot of American English is like literal, the same way that German is. I mentioned this before. So for example, you know, the German language is very literal. So instead of toilet, they say water closet, right? In German, I forget the German word for it, but it's water closet. In America, what we in Britain call a strimmer, you know, that garden tool that you use for trimming the edges of lawns and stuff like that, a strimmer, or, you know, clearing pathways of vegetation. Americans call it a weed whacker. So they give it a literal name, not an abstract name like a strimmer. They call it a weed whacker. And that is the German influence even in American English. They use German words like Wiener, you know, for the sausage and stuff like that. Yeah, sidewalk, exactly, exactamo. The sidewalk. They have all these like weird, even the English words are very literal, which is the German influence in their culture. Yeah, sidewalk, weed whacker. Stick shift, see? Here you go, flashlight, exactly. Flashlight, stick shift. Yup, it's just like German. Like American English is like German in how literal it is. Yep. There you go. I was told, or I heard somewhere, maybe saw it in a video, that the word for nipple in German basically translates as chest warts. Yo, chest wart. If anyone speaks German in the chat, please confirm or deny whether that's true. But as I understand it, the word for nipple in German basically translates as chest warts. Yo. Big up GMS Nightmare for the super chat. He says, Ward versus Benavidez, Kovalev versus Bivol or Beterbiev. I take Bivol and Beterbiev over Kovalev all day. Ward, Benavidez. That is a real tough one. I know most people want to say Ward. But he never fought anyone like Benavidez. And Benavidez never fought anyone like Ward. It's a hard one now. Push comes to shove, I'll probably go Ward, but on another day I might give you the opposite answer. Big up GMS Nightmare. Okay, Lego says that is correct. Breastwort, as I recall my German teacher saying. Crazy. There's another one. See, you guys are seeing it now. Tailpipe for exhaust, indeed. There's another one. The American English is far more literal than British English because of the German influence on them. Yep, elevator for lift. That's another literal one. There you go. But then again, lift is literal because it's lifting you up. Crosswalk, yeah, kindergarten. Yeah. Yes, yes, there are some weird British words. There's no doubt about that. And that word, which I dare not even repeat, is also the word, a derogatory word for someone who plays for the other team in the UK. But that word is used as a cigarette, and it's also used for someone who, you know, plays for the other side. That's right, sweater is literal because it's supposed to make you sweat, whereas jumper, it's abstract, right? What Americans call a sweater, in British English, we call a jumper. I mean, what does that even mean? Why is it called a jumper? Yeah, modern English is an amalgam of different languages. Obviously, there's the French influence, Romance language influence, the Germanic influence, so on and so forth. All right, peeps, I'm going to shut this one down. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining the conversation, and a special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were Matt Borgerson, Ben Odom, George, Mark Odell, JR, President Brush, Anthony Palmer, Grizz, Quadruple A, Ibizba, Ibrahim, Luca, Kayvon Green, and GMS Nightmare. Big up each and every one of you, and big up everyone who joined the conversation. Until next time, take care, be good. I'll catch you on the other side. I'm out.